Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Raina Savage, the manager of Griffith Regional Theatre. I'm here on Wiradjuri country in the Western Riverina, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this area, the Wiradjuri Nation, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Welcome to West End Stadium in Griffith, where last night we launched the fabulous new theatre work celebrating the life of tennis legend and proud Wiradjuri woman Evonne Goolagong. That work is called Sunshine Supergirl, and I'm joined today by the writer and director of that fantastic work, Yorta Gunakano theatre maker, Andrea James. Welcome, Andrea.
Hi, Raina. Good to be here.
So it's very exciting to have you with us today in the Sunshine Supergirl Lounge, and it's been an incredible experience for us all to be able to host the world premiere of your show here on Goolagong country, where Evonne was born and where she experienced some of her very earliest tennis successes. We've got some people joining us here live in the lounge and lots of others joining us live on Facebook. So hello to everyone out there. If you'd like to join the conversation, please use the chat function and to share your thoughts or ask any questions, and we'll bring them in during the interview. And of course there'll be opportunity for people in the live audience to ask questions a bit later on as well. So Andrea, it was an absolutely amazing night last night with a fantastic welcome ceremony by the Wiradjuri community put together by Kerry Johnson of Brundy Theatre. She did a fantastic job, and then we had the red carpet function with Evonne's family and the community members to celebrate this very momentous occasion. So it was a huge thing for this community and for Griffith Regional Theatre to put on a world premiere, and it's very rare for that to happen in a regional town. So I know there was a lot of interest in this work from all of the major theatre companies, the major festivals. They commission work all the time and put on things like that, and they've got a lot of experience in that area, so it's a lot easier to actually do a premiere in one of those kind of venues. So it was obviously a very different thing to build an opening show out here in the country. So it was really important to us as a community, but I'd like to ask, what did it mean for you to launch this work on country, and how has that experience been different for you to how you would normally premiere work in a major venue in the city?
Yeah, well, you know, look, it's been so fantastic to be able to do the world premiere here, and, you know, it's been 4 years in the making, and, you know, so to be on this country and to come onto the country and experience the resonance and the spirit of that country, but to also, most importantly, meet all of the people, you know, that I needed to meet in 2017 when I first went on my big field research trip and stayed at the Barellan pub and, you know, met Evonne's little brother Kevin, and then other people that kept telling me you should go and meet such and such and such and such in that lovely country way, you know, that you experience, and yeah, lots of cups of tea. Which was nice. But yeah, it's you know, look, it's been really important for us that we bring the work here. You know, like it's a theatre show, but for us, most importantly, it also has a lot to do with culture and respect and paying respect. So I'm not a Wiradjuri woman. I'm a Yorta Gunakano woman. Obviously, Luke Carroll is a Wiradjuri man in the cast, but everybody else comes from different parts of Australia. So that just felt really, really important to us. And in a way, you know, one of the ambitions is to kind of really follow the trajectory of Evonne herself, you know, come to the place where she was born and really experience the spirit of the land and the people within which she grew up, and then go to Sydney, and then go to Wimbledon, and then go to Paris, then Wimbledon, and then, you know, just take it around the world, really. And so, you know, like for us, you know, obviously COVID has made our job a lot more tricky than it would normally be, and it's an ambitious work as it is. So, you know, actually for us to be able to travel out of the city where that was all a little bit intense, you know, all getting our COVID tests first, of course, and travelling in our little bubble, but to be able to come here and premiere in a much more relaxed way, has just been a real privilege, and it just has meant that we've been able to really build the work and build it technically as well in this beautiful space that you and your staff have helped us to create as well. So that's been really important. And I think, even for the crew, like for us to be able to go out, for our dinner break and watch how the country speaks to people and all of that, and travelling in, people stopped off at Mumbuldul and Barallan and paid homage to the giant racket. All of those experiences have just made this world premiere, far the more richer than if we were to do it, in the big city and then come here. And I'm a country girl myself, so I know how important it is to have these sort of things come to your town, because it makes actually the world of difference. And I think that everybody deserves a rich, beautiful, slick, professional production, a theatre production, and the chance to watch it no matter where they live in Australia. So, it's a great wish come true, really. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. It's really great to hear that it's been as special an experience for you and the cast and crew as it has been for us. And what you were just saying before about that in the country it's really important that everyone, deserves that experience of the theatre and opening those windows and those doors to what else is out there. And because this work is obviously an Indigenous work and it's about a local Aboriginal woman, we know already, and we're starting to hear those stories of Aboriginal people who've come to the theatre or who've booked in, like even just after last night, people who've been to the theatre for the first time and saying, wow, it was an amazing thing and I'm going to, join up and I'm going to come back again. And, wow, so for us, that's an extra gift. It's the gift that just keeps on giving, really. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, like for us, there's been a lot of developments in terms of representation on stage and particularly screens and TV as well. But, there's still a long way to go, And so if people from the community can come and see their own experiences reflected on the stage, and particularly with such an inspiring story like that one, all the better, and there's still always work to be done in that area too. Yeah.
Fantastic. So you talked a little bit about the trajectory of this work and how you've sort of already mapped out in your mind where it's going to travel. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your trajectory. So you can tell us a bit about yourself. You're a Jhuny-Boy woman from Victoria. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your background and family, and then maybe a little bit about your journey, how you became involved in, writing and the theatre yourself?
Yeah. Oh gosh, how long have you got?
Let's move from there.
Look, like you say, I grew up on in northeast Victoria in a little town called Benalla, in my grandfather's country. And in fact, it's only about 3 hours away here to get to Cumragunja, actually, where my great-grandfather and all that mob are from. So, I'm really feeling the pull to it's only a 3-hour trip. So, look, I don't know, like any sort of country girl, I left school quite early and I actually thought I wanted to be a legal secretary because that was the best job going in town.
Very ambitious.
Yes, I went there and I was a legal secretary for about a year and a half and very quickly decided that wasn't the path for me. But in actual fact, it did help me to get my administration skills up, and it helped me to write grant applications later on and, work out a bit about arts law. So, when you go along your journey, you look back and you think, there was a stepping stone in that as well. So I travelled to Melbourne and studied my Bachelor of Arts at La Trobe, and then went to the Victoria College of the Arts as well. Spent about 7 years in Melbourne at the Melbourne Workers Theatre, and that was a great training ground actually, because that company was all about creating space and voice for marginalised communities, people from the working class and from different backgrounds, and they did a lot of stuff. They were probably one of the first companies in Australia to engage in colourblind casting as well. So it was a really great training ground, about how to get political, social issues on stage in a really entertaining sort of way. So cut my teeth there, and Yeah, and I didn't really set out to become a writer, actually. I thought I really wanted to do more acting, but when I went to the VCA, you had to go and learn a Shakespeare monologue, and I was like, Shakespeare? And
Was it really where you saw
no, it
yourself
wasn't. And I
heading?
sort of balked at that a little bit,
Yeah.
and then I found out about the theatre making course, and and that was the opportunity where I could then go and work on my own Aboriginal stories with other Aboriginal people, and so I sort of found my pathway through there, really. So yeah, it's been a really kind of interesting journey, like a 20-year journey, really.
Yeah.
It's just each thing leads from one to the next, really. And I think, when I came out of VCA and our country, Yorta Yorta country, was embroiled in the Yorta Yorta native title claim, that was the first time I actually really picked up my pen, and which was to have a response to this incredibly negative experience we had through the native title claim system. And that's when I wrote Yanagai Yanagai, and kind of accidentally became a writer, and mainly just because the voice needed to be heard and people wanted me to tell it, and then I just never looked back, really.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. I think I was a native title lawyer myself, so the Yorta Yorta case was one that kind of really did just resonate and sort of, send trembles, through the whole country. But it also was something that really did sort of galvanise a response, and the Yorta Yorta people just really kind of came together, and it didn't actually sort of hold them back. It was like there was so much that actually came out of that sort of just really broke the boundaries of native title and just took that whole conversation in a whole lot of new directions. So it was actually really inspiring, what the community did with that, how they actually turned into something different.
Yeah, it was a real catalyst. It was like, okay, well, we didn't get what we wanted there in the High Court, so we'll go to the next thing, and then they started lobbying, more with the local government area, and got the agreement together, the co-management agreement, and and then of course the forest was handed over as a national park, which was a real win in itself. And so we'll never give up.
Absolutely,
we'll always find an avenue.
So and Evonne obviously was a real fighter, and I think it's really interesting that she always had this sort of very, very calm and very warm kind of persona, but there was obviously so much more that went on underneath that. When did you first really become interested in her story, and wanting that to be a journey and that you were part of, and a story that you wanted to tell?
Yeah, well, my partner, Arnhem Dean over there, we were courting at the time, and he knew that I was a mad tennis fan, so every birthday I'd travel to Melbourne with my girlfriends and go to the Australian Open. And so, yes, he really wanted to impress me. So he bought me Evonne's autobiography, and I just picked it up and couldn't put it down. It was a real page turner. And I hadn't really been thinking of her at all before that time, but reading that book, and also just understanding, we know the public persona, we know all of these amazing pictures that immediately spring to mind, but there was also this incredibly rich backstory that got her to that place that was just so heartening. And I found in particular, in terms of how all of the townspeople in Barellan rallied around her, knowing, how difficult things were politically, in this country, in the 50s and 60s.
Absolutely.
And for her to sort of be able to rise up out of that, my dad had exactly the same growing up experience. He's of the same generation as Evonne, knowing that he too grew up on that dirt floor shack with on the fringe camps there. But he was a kind of a real success story that managed to sort of rise up out of that. But also, I say Barellan town, but also her family, this big family, Kenny and Linda Goolagong, that they did something right to bring up this amazing little personality and this great talent. And, she had such confidence in all of the photos. When she's a younger girl, you can just see this incredibly confident young girl.
She's very poised, isn't she?
Incredibly
For such a
poised.
young girl.
Yeah, poised and yet so humble at the same time. So, just a delicious story, and you know, my little niece was 12, 13, 14 at the time that I was writing, and I was so aware of, you know, the vulnerability of that age for her to have left, you know, her hometown at that age.
She was just a little girl, really,
and
out
do that
there
thing
on her own.
was just such a brave thing, and such an incredible, you know, courageous and, you know, thing for their family to do as well, to sacrifice in such a way and to let her go. You know.
Absolutely. It was like the whole family were really, you know, trailblazers as well, because moving to a town where there were no other Aboriginal families, I mean, that was a really kind of brave sort of thing to do as well, because they sort of, the whole family kind of made a path and a place for themselves in that community.
Yeah, that's right. And they would have been one of the first, the most earliest families to own their own home, you know, because the Aboriginal housing cooperatives weren't established then. So it was pretty unique,
So when did you first meet Evonne, and what was that experience like?
Oh, well, you know, look, I kind of black-tracked her down, as we do through various networks, and I managed to get, you know, a complete cold call email because they didn't know me from a bar of soap. But I had read in the autobiography that her mother, Linda, has a link to Annie Hamilton and to the Cumragunja Mission and to the Coopers. So we kind of share a sort of a bloodline. So, you know, we kind of talked our way in through country in the way that you do when you meet any Aboriginal person around. You know, we check each other's family out and
work out how you connect up.
And you know, and I referenced some other plays that I'd written as well, because, you know, obviously I needed to show some credentials. I didn't want to just go, hello, you know, can I write a play about you?
I'm doing an assignment at university. Can I write your life story?
Exactly. You know, and look, and to their credit, they were, you know, they were incredibly generous with their time and very open, you know, and so we had a phone call. I was so nervous, and, you know, and then eventually we went up to visit her, and we had a face-to-face meeting, which was just fantastic. And they're a favourite Italian restaurant where they go to every Sunday, and they boss the chef around, and he knows exactly what Evonne's dietary requirements are, and they hosted us, and we just had a wonderful time, you know, and that all of the anecdotes and all of the incredible memories, they're the things that you don't get to read in a book, or you know, and they just kept coming actually. So as I kept writing drafts, I mean, it was the most nerve-wracking process I've ever experienced, but it was important that they knew how I wanted to tackle the material and what things I really wanted to stage, and there was a bit of toing and froing with that as well, and a bit of negotiating around some things, but also some just golden moments that they'd go, what about this story, or they'd give me a yarn over the phone, you know, and I'd put down the phone and I'd go, you know, so, you know, really quite collaborative, given that they didn't know me at all, and very generous with their time.
Because there's a lot of really powerful material in the story. I think you sort of talked before a bit about there is this persona that we have of Evonne as this kind of, you know, happy-go-lucky, grateful, you know, wonderful, high-achieving Aboriginal woman. But there's all those layers of complexity underneath, and there's some very sort of sensitive material there. So how did you negotiate? I mean, that was obviously very important for you to bring out that complexity, that three dimensions of her, you know, the depth of who she is as a woman and what her journey had really been like. How did you kind of negotiate that with her?
You know, look, it is many layered, and, you know, it's not just a tennis story, obviously. I mean, what makes her story so special is the context with which it was placed, you know, the race politics and the class politics in Australia at that time, you know, and then of course when she goes to Paris and to London and Wimbledon, then suddenly she's in this global world, you know, and so she's not only dealing with the politics of her own country and her own people, but the politics of the world. And so, you know, her decision to go and play in South Africa was a huge one, you know, and there were a lot of people, you know, in the Aboriginal political scene that were very against her doing that, and it put a lot of pressure on her as well. So, you know, that's a really important part of the story. And I think also, you know, we're in the Black Lives Matter era at the moment, and so, you know, there's been huge successes, and people have been able to rise above that. But I think, it's true to say that there's still a lot longer way to go, unfortunately. So those parts of the story were really important. And Evonne really wanted certain things. She wanted people to know, about the paternalism of the media and how they treated and talked about her, as this little biscuit-coloured girl, these kind of things that they thought were sort of cute and unique at the time, obviously really jar now. And she really wanted those to be told. And also, the sexual harassment she experienced on the circuit, that's really important for her, because, the Me Too environment is upon us as well. And I think she is incredibly aware of the vulnerability of young women on the circuit. It's a very individual sport, and it's very closeted and very closed. And she felt that was a really important thing to talk about, to get that out in the open so that any other young girls on the circuit never have to experience, anything like that again. So, so it's a great, lovely story, but there's always these tensions, and that's what kind of gives it its drama and dynamic. Yeah.
So it sounds like it was also a real opportunity for Evonne to tell like another layer of her story, because obviously, as you've talked about, the politics have changed over time, and there's, all those new movements that are actually having those conversations around issues that she could really only hint at or kind of touch on in the past, but sounds like very much she was wanting to go to that next level of conversation and to actually really bring those things out, and that working with you gave her also that platform to tell more of those stories that she had as well.
Yeah, I really hope so. It's a bit of a right of reply, and it's been a while since she wrote that autobiography too.
Exactly,
so, to kind of put that in a whole new context. I mean, I was always worried about, oh golly, it's been 50 years, since she won her first Wimbledon, and how's that going to translate? But it just still feels so relevant and so now, and all of those issues. I mean, all of the community, the people that were around me, yes, in the world premiere, like they were completely in the story and completely understood what her experience was, even though it was some time ago. So I was really thrilled about that.
It was really a lovely last night, I thought, because so many of the mentions in the story were all of people or of places that are local, and just sort of hearing the audience kind of responding to those is actually really nice.
Special.
Yeah. So, I mean, the project's been a long time in the making. I mean, 5 years since you kind of started it. And you've travelled literally far and wide to Wimbledon, out here, all over the place, chasing down parts of the story and talking to people. What was that like, and what were some of the highlights of your research journey, and who are some of the people that you met along the way, and some of the unexpected things that you kind of discovered through travelling down those rabbit holes?
Yeah, gosh. Oh, man. I mean, obviously travelling to Borellan, there was this massive farmers gathering, and all of the accommodation had been booked out. And I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting. And so, I rocked up to the pub, which is the Borellan pub where Kenny used to drink. And I was like, oh, can I have a room? And the guy was like, oh, I don't think you want to stay here. And I'm like,
it's not that kind of place.
Sure, and it was a lovely little pub. They had the fire going, and and so they rushed upstairs because they don't take any accommodation booking, so they rushed upstairs and put some flannelette sheets on the bed and put a little bar heater. And anyway, I just flicked open and I went Google search Borellan pub, and they went, it is haunted, don't go to room number 14. I was like, okay, that was 2 doors down from the haunted room. But that was just such a wonderful experience. And, look, normally I would feel really a bit frightened in that sort of environment, because it was huge, the pub. But I just felt like this is the pub where Kenny used to drink. I'm going to be all right here, And I would just go downstairs and, prop myself up at the bar, and, and people would come and chat. And so, that was just a lovely, really great sort of detour. And as people got to know what I was doing, then they were like, yeah, you should go and talk to such and such. And then there was a woman who was her old schoolmate who'd collected every local newspaper clipping about her, like ever, and then invited me out to her house, you know, and I sat down and had more cups of tea and opened up these scrapbooks, you know, because it was easy to get the major headline papers, but all the local papers were harder to search for. So yeah, that was pretty special.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you know, being able to travel to London, and I just managed to schedule it 1 week before actual Wimbledon. And so I rang and I had a sort of a link through, a fellowship opportunity, and I was just sort of like, it would be really great if I could get to the centre court and experience the environment during the tournament.
Absolutely essential.
You know,
research, really.
and they're like, well, you know, they invited me then down. I was virtually an uninvited artist in residence who came and just lobbed down in the library. And so I found out that the Wimbledon, they have a library that has, and it's in this little bunker, and it has every single thing that's been written about Wimbledon in that library in 60 different languages. So everything was in there about Evonne, and then there was her dress. They brought out, they brought the dress out for me to see.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, and again, and then I went and up and saw the plate and got to see her name twice on both sides of the plate. You know, and all of the while they're getting ready for Wimbledon, so everything's being painted green, and they're, you know...
Oh, heaven for a tennis tragic.
Oh, my God. I just was like... And then, of course, because I'd scammed my way into the first round centre court tickets, and I was speaking to the locals, and I'm going, oh, yeah, I've got centre court tickets. And they're like, you got what? You know, they're actually quite hard to get. So that was just a really memorable experience, and did not want to leave. We sat up on Henman Hill, and they literally had to push us out of Wimbledon because, you know, that's a once in a lifetime sort of opportunity. So to be able to experience that and to imagine Evonne going to that place at 18 years of age, you know, and to seeing all the ivy, you know, and the stuffiness of it. But to know how she just came in and just sort of rattled their cage a little bit was, So, yeah, it was a really great experience.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sounds amazing, yep. So with this show, you are the writer and the director. Now, usually those roles are taken by two different people.
Yes.
So that's an amazing undertaking. So was that a difficult thing? Or, I mean, I guess you didn't have to kind of argue with yourself around what your interpretation of the story was.
No, actually I do. I'm like, oh God, who wrote this terrible scene? Like, what was she thinking, you know? Look, I've done it once before, and that last time, and Anna will attest to this, I go, that's it. I'm never directing my own work ever again. You know, but, oh, golly, it's been great, actually. I learned a lot from the last time I did that. And it's also been really important, like, you know, Performing Lines have really set up this fantastic support team around me. And, you know, I call them my bullshit detectors. So I've got, you know, I had 3 bullshit detectors in the room to make sure that I wasn't getting stuck as a writer in a certain vision, you know, that you have to leave yourself open to the actor's offers as well, because, you know, a writer will have a particular rhythm, or I'll go, when I wrote it, it has to be like this. So you have to stay open to the offers on the one hand, and then on the other, if there are things that are really strong and that you know to be true, you know, you're the best authority for some things too, and it can just help to cut through things as well. So, yeah, you just have to navigate it, you know, and have your wing ladies around you and make sure you're not getting carried away with yourself.
Yeah. So did you set out to be the writer and the director of this, or did that kind of evolve? And what was the journey like from moving from being the writer, which is where you're actually controlling that environment, because as a writer, it's the world of your work is completely within your head and within your control. But then, as you say, as a director, you need to be open to working with the actors and the interaction that happens with that. So that's kind of moving from that kind of internal to a sort of a more porous kind of process. So
well, look, I'm a theatre maker, you know, and people often want to slot you into different roles, you know, So I think having that training and that background, really helped set it up, because I knew from the word go. Well, also I'm a tennis tragic, so I just knew that I wanted to have. I wanted to meld tennis and my two greatest loves, tennis and theatre. So yeah, and so I always knew that I wanted it to be danced, and I had that right from the word go in the writing. It was a convention. So I always really approached this work, more as a theatre maker, and hopefully I think that that's what resonates in the final outcome, because it's quite active, and there's all of these different elements that I kind of always knew when I was writing it, but really approaching it, more as a theatre maker. I mean, it'd be really interesting to see what somebody else does with it. It would be a very different beast. And maybe that might happen in the future. Yeah.
You, when we were speaking earlier this morning, you talked a bit about working with dancers and how exciting that was.
Yeah.
Was that something that you had envisaged initially, or was that something that sort of evolved? And what was it like as a theatre maker, having that interaction and working with the dancers? Did that kind of change how you were envisaging the work on the stage?
Yeah, no, look, I always knew because, the physicality, and to play, the physicality of an elite sports person, that dynamic movement and dance was really necessary. I never quite knew how that was going to play out in terms of having an ensemble of people with different backgrounds, but I also knew that I needed to have actors who can dance and dancers who can act. So everybody's been stretched. The poor actors. It took them about week 4 they started to find their voice. And it's been lovely watching the two disciplines interact with each other. Where the dancers give the actors some tips, but then when it came to learning about how to train their voices, it was fantastic. So, and look, I had to learn a lot about dance, about how we did 3 very detailed developments, because it takes a really long time to develop the material. I mean, they make it look incredibly easy, but, it took a lot of time to develop that stuff, and trial and error. With all of those dancers, and then for Vicky Van Hoot to choreograph, and now Katina doing the additional choreography and the movement direction, having to choreograph that as well. So, yeah, but it's so great working with dancers. They're very disciplined, and they never change, and they get things really quick. And I tell you what, they can do a set change like bing, like, oh my God, I'm just going to have dancers all the time in every show now. But yeah, delightful, and just so beautiful to watch. Yeah, very, very satisfying.
Yeah, I really loved the choreographed parts of the performance. That was really, really, really exciting. So in the process of evolving this work, what were some of the biggest challenges that you kind of faced? And did your kind of ideas of how you wanted to present it, did that sort of change sort of over time, or did it just kind of become more refined?
No, not really. I mean, look, the biggest challenges for me were really just developing a relationship and trust with Evonne and Roger, and trying to do that from a distance. And also, I'm the expert at theatre, but they're the expert at tennis, and how we could just continue to sort of trust each other, and that was, it was a really, like, I had to steel myself for each phone call, because I was so nervous and anxious on the one hand, and then on the other I'm like, actually there's some really tough things that I need to address and talk about here as well, so to continue to negotiate that. And like I said before, just the just learning about how choreography works and how long it needs to take for the time, and then the blending of the movement and the text. Because, out of pure necessity, you kind of have to work on that separately for a little while, and then come into it a little bit later. So even though it looks really easy now, it took a lot of finessing and thinking about how we were going to, make those two worlds just combine seamlessly, the storytelling and then the dancing, and then the sort of reenacting parts of that as well. So yeah, I'm just so grateful that, it's been an ideal trajectory, in that you have, 3 creative developments, a work in progress showing, and you get to think between each one as well. So, and then also, having your hat on as a writer, because there's always the writing stuff you have to keep finessing, and then taking the hat off and then getting into the directing part as well.
So what were you most excited about with the work when it actually kind of finally was really coming together on stage?
Well, I was very excited when Evonne and Roger, we invited them to Sydney, and they came to see the moved reading, and up until that time they'd just been reading the words on the page, and I don't think they go to the theatre very often either. So, it's just words on a page, what is this? And, Roger is a writer, so he was like looking at every page and correcting my grammar along the way. So we have 4-hour phone conversations about, grammar and stuff like that. So, so that was challenging. What was the question again?
What was really exciting?
Oh, exciting. Yes, that's right. So when they finally came into the room, because I felt like it was really important for them to see how we were going to do the physicality, and first thing when they came in, I went, oh God, we haven't done enough work on tennis technique and how to grip. Like, everyone was holding their rackets wrong, and I was just like, oh my God. And we didn't know until about the second week of the 2-week rehearsal that they were going to come, because they were checking out their availabilities and stuff. And then they finally said they were going to come, and I was absolutely petrified. And I had to show to the cast that I was just had to put my best poker face and just kind of like casually let them know that Evonne and Roger were coming to the show, right? And I'm just squealing inside, trying not to demonstrate my pure terror. So they came in, and we moved some of it. Like, it was really important that we moved some of it. We got, about 3 scenes off the page, and we got, 3 good dance pieces. And at the end of the reading, Evonne burst into tears, and I went, thank goodness, they kind of get it. It's not to say that, they have a very critical eye, and it's not to say that, when they finally do come to see the show, that there'll be some bits there that they'll have words to me about. But that was like a massive, achievement to kind of, for our 2 worlds to come together, for them to see, this is how we're going to do it, and this is how it manifests physically in the space, because that's what theatre is. It's not words on a page,
Absolutely.
So that was like a massive turning point in the whole project, actually.
I was actually there for that, and I was sitting on the opposite side of the
I
stage.
deliberately sat away so I couldn't see their faces while the reading was going.
Well, I can say it was an absolutely fascinating thing to actually watch Evonne watching the show, and she was so excited, and she was laughing, and there were times when she was like listening, really, carefully to what was kind of happening, and then crying and obviously moved by the set. So it was actually, it felt like a very special thing to actually be there for her witnessing the story coming alive for the first time.
It was a good day.
She loved it. Yeah.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. So you've talked a bit about what your plans are for the show from here, and that all sounds really exciting. Let's hope the COVID world kind of opens up to let it happen for you. Do you have a new project on the go, or what's? Are you not thinking that far yet?
Something ticking away.
What are the secret things that you've kind of got?
Well, I've been working with Melbourne
Theatre
Theatre Company. I'm doing something in residence there, and I've been writing a story from my grandmother's country. It's called The Black Woman of Gippsland. So it's about this a so-called shipwrecked white woman who was said to have been kidnapped by the Gunai-Kurnai people. I've been working on that for the last year or so, and co-writing a project with a dear friend of mine called Kath Ryan called Dogged, which is about land sovereignty and dingoes, which is going to go on in the theatre at Griffith next year as well. So
Fantastic.
So a couple of little things ticking away.
Excellent. Yeah. Now, when you've got kind of a public persona as a particular role, and you're like a theatre maker, a writer, director, and obviously an Aboriginal writer, director, people can kind of tend, I guess, to see you through that lens, and the view that they have of you as a person is for those things that are associated with your public persona, I guess, in lots of similar ways that Evonne is seen in those public perceptions of her. What's something about you, Andrea, that is outside of that box that people would be really surprised to learn about you in that dimension outside the professional theatre maker sitting here?
I don't know. I don't know, honestly. Well, obviously everyone now knows that I'm a mad tennis tragic, so that's pretty obvious that I'm mad about the tennis. Yeah, look,
and no other secret passions or?
Not really. None that I can reveal.
Might have to ask your partner afterwards.
Yes, I'm a mad fan of Russell Brand, and when I was in London, I joined Twitter because I don't know how to use any of that, but I basically joined Twitter so that I could stalk Russell Brand, and then I went to see a show of his, and I got to meet him in London. Wow. So yes, there you go. You got it out of me.
That's fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much for that, Andrea. Maybe we might take some questions. No? Yep. Is anyone? Yes.
About her story. Gee, that's a really hard question, actually. Yeah, because she seems so kind of perfect in a way. Yeah, I think I don't know if this is less flattering because there is something that's so likable about her. But I think a thing that used to annoy people was that she never really she didn't care whether she won or lost, and so she would seem a bit nonchalant sometimes, and that was kind of really hard to tell in the story, where I'd be like, dramatically, you really want to celebrate a win, and she'd keep going, no, that wouldn't be like me, I wouldn't do that, but we would go, yeah, but we're on stage and we kind of have to do that. Like, I know you wouldn't celebrate that, but that would seem sort of weird. And then obviously I think this is not so much to do with Evonne herself, but there were definitely some people in the community who, tall poppy syndrome's pretty strong in our community. We really feel it deeply when people leave our community and go, and I think that there is a bit of resentment about that for some people in maybe her family or her community as well, and how she responds to that as well. Those really political times when she was really heavily criticised, for going over and playing in South Africa as well. So yeah, but it was pretty hard to dig into. I got to say, surely you're not perfect, and I haven't really found that yet, apart from those sort of few things. Yeah. So.
With the politics, and particularly the apartheid issue that you've just referred to now, that was a really big issue at the time, and she did cop a lot of flack for that. In your discussions with her, has Evonne changed her view about what she did at that time, or
no, not at all?
She's always really clear about what
she's always went. I was going to talk with my racket, and look, she was very protected around that time, and was kept actually quite naive. And she genuinely said, "Yeah, I didn't read the newspapers, but she felt she had a point to prove." She was very close to Margaret Court at that time. Margaret was a bit of a mentor, and of course Margaret kind of swanned in there and made all sorts of statements about, what's the problem, with apartheid. But she definitely felt it as an Aboriginal woman going into a country like that as well. But no, she doesn't waver from that. She doesn't regret that one minute. And also, just by the mere fact that she came back and actually was the first black person to win the South African Cup during apartheid, I think that sort of speaks volumes. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mm.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, gosh.
So, can I just say for the people out there who can't hear, the question was, do you have a favourite part of the play? Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, my. There's so many. And, like, just because, I don't know, every dance moment is just joyous. And I think that's just because I'm a tennis nut. And also, I can just watch a dancer do a slow motion serve, for 2 hours. I don't know why that interests me so much, but it does. But it is beautiful. Yeah, I really enjoyed the love story, and I was a bit worried and tentative about that. And I've never written anything kind of quite schmaltzy and romantic before, but we have the most beautiful, likable, believable couple in the play. The love interest is just so sort of delightful, and Roger's dressed in a pink shirt, and and that's kind of been really nice. I wasn't expecting that to be such an enjoyable part of the sort of overall story. He comes in as a sort of a saviour, and I really enjoy that too. So yeah, but yeah, so many things that I'm really enjoying that are really satisfying to watch. Yeah, but they're the two main things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
you want
Want
to
to
read?
relay? Oh, yeah. So the
repeat
question was about Evonne's story is so big. How did I choose what to put in the play? Yeah, in a nutshell. Oh my, like actually, yeah. This is just like the tip of the iceberg. There is so much more that goes on, and so many more layers to that story as well. I mean, my bullshit detector number one, got the red pen out, pretty quickly too, because we want to keep it driven as well. But yeah, it was a really hard decision. But at the same time, as a theatre maker, you get a sense of what's going to resonate so well on the stage. So, there were some really key moments that I knew absolutely are going to go in, absolutely. Because, like once she came back from the Wimbledon comeback, there was a whole other life about returning home and developing her foundation and, you know, her struggle to kind of keep playing for the 3 or 4 years after she came back as well, and then all of the work she's doing now at the Goolagong Foundation. And there was much more going on, with Roger and her getting married and her coming back to Barellan to get married as well. And, when she won her first Wimbledon, she came here, and there's just such gorgeous footage of Barellan turns out for her, and they march every single, like the little footy team, the little, like just all out, and she's on this little dinky truck with this paper crepe, like, oh my God, that has to go in one day. Like, it was so great, when those moments when she came back home. Yeah, I'm sorry I couldn't get those in. Yeah, so yeah. But anyway, I don't know. You have to read the book.
Do you think there's more to tell for you in the Evonne story, or if you've done
No,
that?
I feel very satisfied. Yeah, and there is talk of a TV series as well, so I'm waiting with bated breath.
That would be really
to
exciting,
see
because
how and when and if that's going to happen.
wow,
It's
because you could
in the
then
pipeline.
tell so much more of those different little stories.
Yeah, I
in that.
hope so. Yeah, depending on the budget and what COVID's doing
Yeah.
at the moment too. But yeah, I think that'll be really exciting.
Yeah.
Really exciting. Yeah.
So in Barellan, did you get to talk to some of those, obviously those people who worked with Evonne or knew her
Yeah, the older
personally?
people were a bit harder to track down, and lots of people have kind of passed away as well. So, I mean, we've got Bill Kurtzman's scrapbooks over there. So he was the president of the Barellan Club
Tennis club.
changed the age exemption so she could join at 7 years old. And so yeah, I never got to meet Mr. Kurtzman, and she talks about him with such fondness. But I did get to meet Cecil Dicker, who's played brilliantly by Katina Olsen, who's found her voice as a dancer. But I did get to meet his son, who actually Kevin stays out on their farm. So that was, you know, a delight to hear all those names as well and meet people that have a link to the story.
There are some great names in it, in the story.
And I did not make them up. They're true. Absolutely true. And Mr. Dunlop did live next door to them. Their names was...
Absolutely.
You know.
Okay, another question,
Oh. Yeah. Well, initially we had 4, just because I was so conscious that you need to keep the cast down to make it affordable and tourable. But we found that by doing that, because then poor Guy Simon, who was in the development, played every male role, and it just was ridiculous. And then I realised I couldn't play a love triangle with 2 people. So yeah, which was like, yeah. So in the final development, I created an extra cast member and I spread those male roles, and it's worked a beauty, actually. I'm really glad I did that. It's one of those things where you go, I don't know why I didn't do that kind of earlier, because that love triangle now is really strong and physically manifest. So so we went from 4 to 5, and it'll cost a little bit of extra, but I think it's worth it. Yeah.
And worth it to have the John Newcomb character in there, definitely.
Hands down, like, goes without saying.
Yeah. It places the whole thing in the right context, I think. Yeah. Okay, we've probably got time for one more question, if there's anyone out there. Yep. Nope. Okay, well, thank you so much, Andrea. It's been, there's the win, so it's perfect timing. So thank you so much for joining us today and sharing a bit about your journey and the journey that you've shared with Evonne. And thank you once again for bringing this fabulous show to Griffith. It's been an absolute treat for the whole community.
Thank you
very much.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.